Chapter 12. A resolute silence gripped me as Olivia fixed her gaze on me, anticipating a response. Her inquiry lingered with an air of calm resignation. What should I have done? Should I have stayed there and died? Regarding the validity of her actions, my contemplation revealed no additional insights to contribute. I lacked the intellectual capacity to pass judgment on their sins and subsequent punishments. However, despite the shared attributes of name and eye color, I was distinct from their alter ego. My existence was characterized by a personal essence, wherein self-interest took precedence over considerations for others. I can't be objective because I'm not in your shoes. Of course you aren't, which is why I'm here. Still, it might have been better to confide in Edward. To Edward? He would have supported you. The confident nature of my response left Olivia and Brandon in a state of disbelief, prompting speculation about the validity of my assurance. Could it be that my confidence in Edward's assistance to expose Robert was misplaced? Stumbling over my words, I elicited laughter from Olivia. Despite being Robert's son. He is Robert's son, but he is also Isabella's son. You really see this in an idealistic light. As my mouth parted to articulate a rejoinder, the delicate echo of footsteps graced the staircase behind me. The light and familiar cadence of those steps spoke volumes. Even without a physical shift, I posed my inquiry to the unseen. Edward, do you also think I'm too idealistic? Edward answered as he stood beside me.
まさか、君の言うことはいつも正しい。
Of course not. Your judgment is always sound.
そもそも、僕が父の肩を持つなんて話にならないよ。
It wouldn't make sense for me to side with my father. Turning my head to scrutinize Edward's face, I found an unwavering determination in his eyes. With Edward's arrival, all actors in this disconcerting spectacle took their places. Edward's gaze fixated on Brandon, the individual responsible for subduing Olivia.
おじさん、オリビアを話してくれませんか?
Uncle, would you let go of Olivia? Edward, but...
お願いします。
Please. A moment of hesitation gripped Brandon before he reluctantly released his grip. Olivia swiftly rose, retreating cautiously while discreetly revealing a hidden dagger concealed beneath her skirt. What are you thinking? Though her intent to strike seemed deferred, vigilance prevailed. My attempt to shield Edward proved futile as he advanced a step closer to her.
オリビア、あなたに聞きたいことがあります。
Olivia, may I ask? Olivia, in response, took several steps backward, warily observing Edward's actions. Whatever you ask, I have nothing to tell you.
やめてください。僕はあなたと別れたくないです。
Please don't say that. I don't want to be at odds with you. The eyes of everyone widened in disbelief. Is there any relationship that wouldn't crumble?
あなたはお母さんの友達で、私の大母じゃないですか。
I believe there are quite a few. You're my mother's friend and my godmother. Ha! There's no point in holding on to relationships that have fallen apart. Indeed, she was correct. Their perceived connection was an illusory fabrication riddled with deceit. Nevertheless, Edward persisted, unraveling on the significance she held for him.
しかしあなたは、僕に学びをくれた人です。
But you were the one who taught me how to be human. That was meaningless. I just chose the easiest way to get my revenge.
恐怖に震える僕と一緒に夜を過ごしてくれたじゃないですか。
You even stayed with me during those terrifying nights. Ha! I was the cause of all your misery, Edward. Don't get all smug because I soothed you a little. In the face of Olivia's scornful retort, Edward shook his head.
いいえ、オリビア、あなたではありません。
No, Olivia, it wasn't you. What?
あなたがいなかった時の私も不幸でした。むしろあなたが来て良くなりました。
I was just as unhappy when you weren't around, and when you came, my life got better. Much like our collective ignorance concerning Olivia's full story, Edward harbored undisclosed chapters of his own. Olivia, biting her lip, grappled with vague suspicions about his concealed past. Edward turned to her, his plea manifesting in the form of a pivotal question.
オリビア、本当に僕はあなたの敵ですか?
Olivia, am I truly your enemy? Upon hearing those words, Olivia tightly shut her eyes for a fleeting moment. Then, with a resolute gaze, she clenched her hands and opened them. We may not be enemies, but that doesn't alter the fact that you are Robert's son.
そうですか.
Does it? Edward, halting in response to Olivia's disapproval, found himself standing directly in front of her. Though a sense of unease pervaded the air, the gravity of the moment dissuaded any intervention on my part. In defiance of my desire to separate them, Edward went a step further, dropping to one knee.
それでは、ロバートの息子として、あなたの家族のおかげで生まれてこれた人間として言います。
Then I speak as Robert's son, as one born of your family's blood.
僕たちの罪を認めます。あなたに心からお詫びを申し上げます。
We acknowledge our sins and offer you our sincere apologies. Unlike her composure with Brandon, Olivia's lips quivered. Finally, after countless years of suffering, the recognition of their sins stirred an emotion of indescribable magnitude within her. Now, after everything, are you finally begging me for mercy?
言い訳をするつもりはありません。
I have no intention of using ignorance as an excuse. Had Edward been aware, he would have confessed to wrongdoing much earlier. The intensifying atmosphere compelled me to intervene. However, Brandon's grip on my wrist thwarted any such action, and I turned my head to him in surprise. Brandon? Let's not interrupt. I noticed his countenance marked by anguish, guilt, and a subtle layer of sadness, but I couldn't quite discern the reason behind his intervention. Is that all you've got to say after witnessing everything that's happening? Even as I averted my gaze, Olivia's hostility towards Edward remained unwavering. His attempts at reasoning seemed to backfire, amplifying her voice. As her laughter echoed through the cavernous basement, a sense of foreboding tightened around my heart. My earlier accusation to Brandon was met with an even tighter grip on my wrist, almost bordering on pain. Just watch. I gritted my teeth, my attention forcibly drawn to the two figures. In the madness that danced in her eyes, an eerie light flickered, and I found myself playing the futile role of the lone resistor against Olivia's impending storm. The blade ascended, and Olivia, with clenched teeth, unleashed a tempest of fury upon the stage. Sin can only be paid for by death. You too, me too, we are all sinners and must die. How could I remain a passive spectator to this, where death threatened to swallow him whole? The impulse to shake off Brandon's restraining grip surged within me, urging me to race toward Edward. Breaking the heavy silence, Edward's lifted head heralded a moment of frozen anticipation.
いいえ、間違っています。
No, you're mistaken. The plummeting dagger hung suspended in midair. A subtle quirk at the corner of Olivia's mouth hinted at an unsettling desire to hear Edward's last words. Judging by what you're saying, it seems you're afraid.
死よりもっと恐ろしいことを知っているのに、どうして怖がるんですか?
How can I fear when I'm aware of something even more terrifying than death? In a dramatic upheaval, Edward stood tall, confronting Olivia. Her anticipation of his surrender was met with an unexpected resolve, a fervor for life.
ただ、私がしようとしている贖罪と、あなたが望む贖罪が違うだけです。
It's just that the atonement I seek differs from the one you want me to make. You believe that you have the freedom to choose how to atone.
そうです。僕には選択権そのものがありません。 僕の命はクララのものですから。
No, I don't have a choice. For my life belongs to Clara.
だから罪を償ったからといって死ぬわけにはいきません。
Surrendering my life won't be an option for atonement. Edward's declaration introduced a perplexing dimension that left Olivia momentarily confounded. The mention of Clara echoed with ambiguity. Was it a reference to me, or Olivia's departed daughter? As this mystery enveloped the room, Olivia's gaze shifted momentarily past Edward to me. The moment our eyes met, a spark of anger ignited in her wide eyes, casting an eerie glow. Do you dare to mock me?
僕は自分が背負った命を放棄することはできないと言っているのです。
What I'm trying to convey is that I cannot forfeit the life I carry.
犠牲になった人々、一生を戦うと誓った人のためにも。
For the sake of those sacrificed, and for the one vowed to fight for their whole life, I cannot surrender. You deranged, arrogant child! How dare you! How dare you mention them! She stomped her foot, venting her ire. You have no idea how deceitful and blasphemous your words are!
知っている。
I am well aware. It's a mere sanctimony of the living.
けれどここで終われば悪魔の手に遊ばれただけだ。
But if that's how it ends, then we're all just playing pawns of the devil. Playing pawns would be better. I'd rather we all go to hell.
そんなことを望まないでしょう。誰も愛する人が地獄に行くことを望んでいません。
You wouldn't want that. No one wants their loved ones to go to hell.
あなたもそうでしょう。
Neither do you. Edward, unyielding, took a decisive step forward, seemingly impervious to Olivia's menacing posture. Whether it was a matter of pride or a genuine change of heart, Olivia reluctantly retreated from his advancing presence. In an unexpected gesture, Edward extended his hand, a silent invitation for her to grasp it.
オリビア、どうか救われる道を探してください。せめて生きている間、償いながら。
Olivia, please find a way to be saved, at least for the time you are alive, as a form of penance.
憎むための時間ではなく、愛するための時間を。
Spend your time not for those who harbor hatred, but for those who love you. Olivia, ensnared by Edward's unwavering gaze, stood transfixed. Indeed, she couldn't tear her eyes away from his. In the play of emotions, a wistful, nostalgic light flickered intermittently with anger. With a deliberate gesture, Edward retrieved the dagger from Olivia's slackened hand, prompting a resigned inquiry from her. How can I be saved when I've lost my family and myself?
ロバートを告発して水面上に事件を挙げます。少なくとも正当に全てを終わらせなさい。
Prosecute Robert. Expose his crimes. At least bring it all to a just end. What difference does it make if I expose him justly?
僕は犯罪者であり、悪魔崇拝者の息子になるだろうし、あなたの人生は少しでも救われるでしょう。
I would live the rest of my life as the son of an atrocious criminal and a devil worshipper. I hope that would alleviate your pain a bit. As her eyes darkened, oscillating between the fallen weapon and Edward, a poignant tension filled the room. I don't want that. Because Isabella and her son don't deserve to be treated like that. Edward's eyes widened in response, while Olivia, unwilling to witness his expression, closed hers. In a display of frustration and anger, she contorted her face, teetering on the brink of tears. Isabella, I hate you. I hate you. I vowed I would leave everything behind. But why won't you be evil to the end? Edward, thinking unworthy of such sentiments, fought back his own tears. He bent down to meet Olivia's gaze, and then lowered his head. Brandon sighed. I owe Edward once again. opposed the shattering of her vengeful resolve, Olivia, in a surprising twist, accompanied us outside. Her gaze traced the canvas of the dusky indigo sky, mapping the journey of the waning sun. Strikingly, in this moment, she exuded a sense of tranquility, a departure from the turbulence that had defined her existence. Edward, positioned in the shadows behind Olivia, mirrored her every step. As she skillfully cut through the vines, he dutifully cleared a path. Maintaining a respectful distance, he observed her interactions with a time-worn cradle. Olivia exited the cabin, cradling a few paintings in a ring case. Edward glanced back at the modest arrangement.
他に気になることはありませんか?
Is there anything else you need to pack? Nothing more. It's a miracle I have this much left after all those years. In the shared gaze that unfolded, a poignant solitude seemed to permeate, as if the very essence of her loneliness in her words had taken on an infectious quality. Brandon meticulously coated the cabin and basement hall with oil before igniting a match. Upon facing Olivia, she scoffed, asserting that these structures had to succumb to the flames regardless. It's only going to be more painful the longer its grasp is, for you and for me. A moment of collective solemnity ensued, with Brandon and Edward closing their eyes and entwining hands in prayer, an offering for the departed. Olivia, averse to this ritual, instead extracted something dry from her chest pocket. What is that? An umbilical cord. Olivia threw the umbilical cord into the fire, her mutterings a cryptic communion with the dancing flames. Unless I were crazier, I wouldn't be able to kill him. If I were any crazier, then maybe, but at least he looks more like Isabella. Confluence of longing and sorrow etched Olivia's countenance. Her wistful gaze lingered upon Edward, his silhouette adorned by the shifting hues of the fervent blaze. I too had parents whom I hated. The genesis of Olivia's flight to the manor with Isabella traced back to a singular motive: an estrangement from a family devoid of affection, and an unyielding pursuit of a new beginning. Pity eluded me, tethered as I was to the collateral consequences of her transgressions. Yet an inability to harbor animosity toward her created a tumultuous landscape within. Nervously, my eyes rolled. So, what are you going to do now? Are you asking me? Well, I could be. As my gaze awkwardly shifted away, Olivia emitted a brief tongue click. Even without direct eye contact, her expression conveyed a sense of disdain, as if she found my demeanor miserable. She closed her mouth, inhaling deeply before exhaling slowly, preparing to articulate her response. Turn myself in.
そんなことしなくてもいいですよ。
You don't have to. Olivia's eyes sharpened at the interruption. Her unwavering presence remained formidable. Shifting her attention to Edward, who stood in her path, she cast accusations of pathetic behavior upon him. Birds of a feather flock together, don't they? You and Clara. An audible sigh escaped me, my shoulders slumping in response. Edward's earlier momentum waned, and he, too, averted his gaze from Olivia. Sidestepping him, Olivia positioned herself resolutely in front of the cabin, her voice carrying the echoes of fatigue. You may forgive me, but I can't. I need to face the consequences, especially for what I've done.
でも、あなたも。
But you also. You talk too much. With a turn of her head, Olivia directed a stern shout at Edward, who, in embarrassment, lowered his head. The nuanced relationship between Olivia, the tutor, and Edward, the untidy young master, unfolded before me, eliciting an awkward smile. At Brandon's call, Edward excused himself and rushed to the gate. The fire brigade had arrived, summoned by the billowing smoke. The ensuing commotion gradually diluted the initial shock, and the grip of nervousness loosened, leaving me weakened and unsteady. A brush with then consciousness seemed imminent were it not for my enduring stamina. Noticing my condition, Olivia, with practiced ease, guided me to a corner to sit. Her gaze, infused with affection, lingered on my fatigued form. Stoically, I weathered Olivia's wistful expressions as she wiped my forehead with her handkerchief, later placing it into my hand. Clara. My gaze remained locked with hers, and in that silent exchange she offered a sincere apology for the first time. I owe you an apology. I'm truly sorry. For both deceiving me into poisoning Robert and endangering my life. I, being far from a saint, found it challenging to accept her contrition immediately. However, if I could gather myself in time, perhaps a day would come when the wounds inflicted would no longer ache. Someday, I will forgive you. Olivia's eyes brightened in response. Thank you. I wish you a long, happy, and healthy life. Although I'm uncertain whether the prayers of a devil worshipper hold any sway. In a manner akin to a mother blessing her daughter, as if offering a prayer to God for the first time, she closed her eyes. A serene smile adorned her countenance, exuding a grace and radiance surpassing that of any noblewoman. This, I speculated, must be the Olivia whom Isabella loved. At the arrival of the fire brigade, Olivia sprang to her feet. In her ascent, I grasped the fabric of her skirt, holding her back. You're coming back, aren't you? Olivia regarded me with disbelief, punctuating the moment with a disapproving click of her tongue. You two are indeed cut from the same cloth. Bending down to establish eye contact, she wore an expression saturated with annoyance. Clara, listen closely. I've grown weary of this manner, and I have no plans whatsoever to return. Ah. So, as a parting gift, I will give you a piece of advice. A soft whisper reached my ear, lips barely brushing against it. Take off Edward's pendant. Taking the marionette from my arms, Olivia flung it into the flames. My surprised gaze shifted to Edward, yet no discernible consequence unfolded. Olivia, with purpose, advanced towards the approaching police. Watching her leave, Brandon tightly shut his eyes. The rain began to shower down. We later learned that 3 days had elapsed in a state of unconsciousness after the incident. The manor buzzed with discussions revolving around Olivia, the gossip persisting even upon my return to work. Frequently summoned by various individuals, I found myself recounting the events of that day, given my involvement. There's nothing to talk about. Are you sure? Absolutely. Nothing happened. I mean it. My attempt at laughter was met with Alice's unwavering glare. After a contemplative moment, she redirected her attention to Thomas, pinching his cheek with a shout. Will you cut it out? Look at her face. You're killing her. I was just curious, that's all. Amidst the fervent struggle between the two, I couldn't help but chuckle. Bruce deftly opened the door through which I escaped. I acknowledged his subtle wink, recognizing the presence of a figure standing at a distance. Expressing my gratitude with a clasped hand gesture, I moved forward. Edward, have you been waiting? The azure eyes, previously fixed on the rain, now turned toward me. Instinctively adjusting my attire, I felt the touch of his hand running through my unkempt hair.
いや、僕もちょうど来たところだよ。
No, I just got here too. We walked side by side down the corridor. Silence enveloped us as a consequence of the departure or resignation of others. The vacant surroundings provided an opportune moment to discuss the events of the day. How are you feeling? Is everything all right?
声も聞こえないし、心も楽だ。
Yes, I don't hear the voices. I feel fine. Upon Olivia's departure, the haunting curse that gripped the manor relinquished its hold. The eerie cries of Edward's mother faded, and the elusive shadows that once danced through the corridors vanished. Still, restricted within the manor's confines, Edward deemed it necessary to summon the authorities for an investigation, bringing them to the manor rather than venturing outside. Yet this state of affairs would be transitory. The whispered words of Olivia lingered, casting a spell over my thoughts. I fixed my gaze upon the pendant gracing Edward's neck, Olivia's deceptive gift disguised as a remnant of Isabella. She said to take it off. Placing my hand on Edward's shoulder, as if under a spell, I halted him. Edward turned.
どうしたの?
What's the matter? Edward, do you trust me?
もちろん信じているよ。
Of course I do. The thing is, Olivia told me something. I recounted Olivia's revelations during his absence. Edward, attentive and captivated, absorbed the information.
確かに僕のお母さん、イザベラには呪術的な知識がなかったはずだ。
Certainly my mother Isabella had no knowledge of witchcraft. Right, which means Olivia put the pendant on your neck to cast the spell. The curse that bound Edward within the manor walls differed from the earlier inexplicable phenomena. My focus shifted from the pendant to Edward's countenance. It wasn't a talisman for protection. With the curse lifted, there seemed to be no harm in removing the talisman. However, this seemingly straightforward act belied the weight of uncertainty that gripped us. Edward, having worn the pendant throughout his life, displayed hesitance in parting with it. And my concern extended to the possibility of Olivia exploiting my role to inflict harm upon him. After thorough deliberation, we chose to place trust in Olivia's final words. I entwined my hands with his, steadying his trembling grip. In the anticipation that Olivia's last words held an essence of mercy and benevolence, we apprehensively undid the clasp of the chain. With locked eyes, we jointly liberated the pendant from around his neck. How do you feel?
なんともない。
I feel nothing. No cataclysmic event ensued. Edward suffered no injury, no coughing fit, no collapse. He simply stared at me, evidently moved by an inexplicable sensation. I briefly squeezed his hesitant hands before releasing them. Edward relinquished his hold on the chain. In an instant, the pendant, resembling crumbling, rusted metal, chipped away and disintegrated. The blackened remains scattered. Edward drew me into a tight embrace. Resting against his trembling shoulder, I closed my eyes, our hearts racing in unison. So I guess the curse was broken! But it's still going! With the tumultuous events of the manor settling, a new lord emerged. Brandon, engrossed in tidying Robert's study, greeted us. "Oh, here you are! Please, have a seat!" Gesturing cheerfully as he dusted the furniture, Brandon's customary exuberance elicited a brief laugh. Edward guided me into the room, while Alan, disengaging from assisting Brandon, departed to fetch tea. Seated across from Brandon, we directed our attention toward him. "Congratulations on becoming the owner of this manor, Mr. Brandon." "There's nothing too impressive about it, Miss Clara. It's only because Edward doesn't want it." My gaze shifted towards Edward, who, in turn, averted his gaze. His apparent indifference entailed a deliberate intention. Brandon's ascension to the position of the new lord of the manor had a reason Edward had explicitly disclosed. Expressing his weariness with the manor, he harbored no desire to retain ownership. The audacity of this decision, amidst the chaos and tumult, caught me off guard. While I acknowledged his curiosity about the world beyond the estate borders, couldn't he have surrendered his ownership when everything had settled down? My accusatory gaze prompted Edward to scratch his cheek and offer an awkward smile in response.
実はもう邸宅に泊まりたくないんだ。
Honestly, I'm not inclined to stay at the manor any longer.
君がいて幸せな日ができたけど、ほとんどが辛いことでいっぱいだったんだ。
While having you here has brought moments of joy, the rest has been filled with pain. Edward, turning his head towards the mausoleum, hinted at the lingering shadows in him. The need to release this darkness propelled him forward, a compulsion Brandon and I couldn't deter. Despite his inclination to relinquish ownership, Edward remained the rightful proprietor, a fact Brandon felt compelled to emphasize. I may be managing things on your behalf, but you're still the lord of this manor. If you ever wish to return, feel free to do so.
そうします。
I'll take that into consideration. Edward, of course, looked reluctant. Edward's departure for a nearby town for essential supplies left Alan frustrated upon his return with tea. Brandon was meticulously packing away books on spells and witchcraft. I noted his transformation into a gentleman, leaving behind his days of unfettered freedom. Curiosity piqued, I wondered about Brandon's decision to remain at the manor. Leaving with Edward was a viable option for him. Like those accustomed to townhouse living, often entrusted their homes to trustworthy caretakers in their absence. The intensity of my questioning gaze prompted Brandon to meet my eyes. Don't look at me so passionately. It's disrespectful to Edward. That's not what this is about. Then what? I'm wondering why you're staying back. His hand momentarily fidgeted with a box, and a heavy sigh escaped him as he rubbed his forehead. Watching Edward move on made me feel pathetic. I've been a passive bystander and a renegade, avoiding my responsibilities all my life. Now I want to live making amends. I thought you were taking advantage of this opportunity now that the curse has been lifted. I harbored suspicions, but hearing his confession brought relief. Brandon, staggered by my relentlessness, winked and grinned. Actually, that's part of the motive. He proceeded to laugh when met with my bewildered expression. Witnessing our interaction, Alan sighed and joined in the laughter. In exchange for the manor, Brandon chose to entrust his trading enterprises to Edward's capable hands. Their joint decisions to temporarily depart from the manor aimed at preparing Edward for the role of operator. The reality was stark. I couldn't accompany them. Without the formalities of engagement or marriage, I, a woman of different societal standing, could only nod in acceptance. On the day of their departure, I couldn't quite conceal the subtle loneliness lingering behind my smile. Edward, having noticed my awkward smile, tenderly pressed his lips to the back of my hand in a public display of affection.
次は一緒に行きましょう。
Let's arrange to travel together the next time we meet. I must admit, Edward possessed an exceptional perceptiveness. While he was away, Alan and I assumed roles that Olivia had once filled diligently. The void left by her departure emphasized the extent of her workload. Exactly how did she juggle all this work while seeking revenge? I mean, she did have the help of the devil, so you know. In contemplation, I pondered whether her extraordinary abilities stemmed from a pact with the infernal. I suspect yes. Did temporal currents diverge for one possessing witchcraft? My thoughts grunted through the complexities, attempting to unravel the myriad issues surrounding me. Amidst muttering musings on devils and witches, Alice appeared, escorted by Alan. She regarded me with a glance of sympathy, extending her hand to Alan. I'll sign it. And so Alice became the new housekeeper. In the wake of Alice's gracious act, I found myself undergoing training for a different role. My gaze, avoiding her lady's scrutinizing eyes, remained focused as she instructed me to adjust my posture. Here I was, learning the intricacies of noble curtsies and attitudes as Edward's fiancée. The unexpected reappearance of Lady Jane in the quiet countryside caught me off guard. Rumor had it that she had journeyed all the way from the city with the singular purpose of personally overseeing my education. My sense of disbelief must have been evident, as Lady Jane lifted my chin, attempting to reinstate a sense of composure. Is there an issue with me guiding and correcting my foster daughter's behavior? It's my responsibility. What, me? Since when? Your spouse and guardian visited my salon asking if I could take you under my wing. Pardon? How did I not realize Lady Isabella had a grown-up son? I was disappointed that I had no unmarried daughter. This is a wonderful opportunity. Pardon? Recollections flooded my mind of a past conversation with Edward, his eyes ablaze with anticipation as he invited me to accompany him on his next venture. Unbeknownst to me, He had collaborated with Brandon, leveraging the influence of his maternal family to impress Lady Jane. Ah, the scheming antics of the privileged class, I mused inwardly, wincing at the mere thought of trusting those folks. Suppressing my frustration, I straightened my posture at Lady Jane's insistence. As the seasons transitioned with a flurry of activity, Edward finally returned. I examined the elaborate details of the dress Lady Jane and the servants had helped me don. A query about the intricacies of its design escaped my lips. Isn't this a bit extravagant? No, it's just perfect. Indeed, you should adorn yourself as his fiancée. I don't see the beauty in looking like this. Lady Jane waved her fan dismissively before folding it with a scoff. This is how you make him regret not spending time with you. Absolutely, make him regret it. Releasing a prolonged sigh, I seized the hem of my lavishly adorned dress. Its substantial weight caused discomfort in my wrists. I fervently hoped to avoid any mishaps, dreading the prospect of tripping and descending the stairs ungracefully. Through the autumnal hues of the garden, I spotted Edward, looking healthier than before. Relief and amusement mingled within me. Had he been enjoying himself while I endured solitude? Determined, I marched towards him, the weight of my dress adding purpose to each step. Edward turned hesitantly, his eyes widening in surprise by the approaching footsteps. Blinking rapidly, he struggled to conceal his astonishment.
Kuro, la?
Releasing the hem of my dress, I extended my hands in a practiced gesture. Edward, seemingly taken aback by my boldness, accepted my hand for a kiss. I emulated the intimacy of Olivia, my actions deliberately measured. Well, look who's back so soon. I nearly expired from old age waiting for your return.
思ったよりブランドンが展開した事業が多かったからね。海外の店舗が10店舗もあります。
I'm sorry. It turned out Brandon had a bigger business than I thought. He's got 10 branches abroad. Branches abroad? Did you visit all those places?
まさか。海外から来る人々を迎えるのに忙しかったんです。
No, I've been busy welcoming guests from overseas. Edward began sharing the details of his travels when he noticed my curiosity. From cleaning up Brandon's mess, to a visit to Lady Jane's salon, and a reunion with his maternal family, he recounted the journey. The doubts surrounding Edward's identity as Isabella's son dissipated upon their first-hand encounter with him, eliciting tears from his maternal family.
お父さんの悪口をものすごく言っていましたよ。
They were pretty ruthless in roasting my father. I mean, that man needs to be boiled alive. He was horrible. Absolutely horrible. A bitter undertone infused his voice with excitement. I squeezed our interlocked hands. Edward promptly smiled and guided me to the center of the garden. Arranged in the heart of the garden, a set of refreshments awaited us. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt for the effort expended in their preparation. Edward graciously escorted me to a chair, pouring tea with practiced elegance. Despite my attempt to emulate the proper sipping etiquette, sophistication eluded me. I took a comforting sip, warming both my stomach and spirits. Edward exhibited a peculiar restlessness, refusing to sit and instead circling around me like an anxious puppy. His actions suggested an underlying unease, and his bright red ears betrayed a sense of embarrassment. Abruptly, he turned to face me, charging towards me with a purpose.
いきなりこんなことを言ったらちょっと突拍子もないだろうけど。
I hope this doesn't come as a surprise. Hmm?
旅行中ずっとあなたのことばかり考えていました。
But you were on my mind throughout the entire trip. My hands involuntarily went limp. Hastily, I set my teacup on its saucer, fearing it might slip through my grasp. Now, what's this about?
いきなりじゃなくて、もっとかっこよく言わなければならないのに。
Nothing. No, it's not nothing. Damn it, I should have said it with more confidence. Raising my head, I met Edward's gaze as he dropped to one knee, retrieving something from his chest. Opening the item, he presented it to me, revealing a gleaming ring in its case. My blinking eyes failed to keep pace with the rapid flutter of Edward's. His face was glowing with unmistakable warmth.
だから、あなたと早く海に行きたいです。
So, I've been wanting to go to the oceans with you. Our gazes locked. Edward's visible embarrassment mirrored my own perplexed expression. There was a fleeting desire in his eyes to escape from the situation, as if the intensity of the moment overwhelmed him.
知っています。とても当惑していて、突然でしょう。帰ってきた途端、プロポーズだなんて。
I know that this might sound sudden and confusing to be asking when I've just returned.
しかし、ずっと考えていました。もしあなたがフィアンセだったら、私が享受するすべてのものを享受できるのに。
However, I couldn't shake the thought, if you were my fiancé, every experience would have been more enjoyable.
私は、あなたを邸宅に置いてきた一日一日がもったいなくて気が狂いそうでした。
Leaving you behind left me full of regret, and those days of freedom felt meaningless without you. Lady Jane, meet the gentleman who appreciates me beyond my attire and regrets any moments spent without me. Observing Edward's trembling hands and flushed cheeks, I couldn't suppress a giggle. My reaction led him to clamp his mouth shut, seemingly embarrassed. I cherished him for his authenticity, youthful yet mature, thoughtful and brimming with love for me. Extending my hand, I gently wrapped my fingers around the back of his hand that held the case, registering the nervous coldness emanating from him. His blue eyes shimmered. He posed the question with an intensity that resembled a possessed man.
どこまでも私と一緒にいてくれませんか?
Would you do me the honor of pledging to stand by my side, no matter where life may lead us? I thought we already agreed to be together, wherever and whenever. Although he had once described my hand as the softest he had ever held, it was arguably rough. Nevertheless, the ring effortlessly glided onto my ring finger, causing the corners of my eyes to warm. Edwin and I shared a locked gaze. I've rearranged my schedule so that we can go to the beach together. Edward extended an invitation for our future, to witness the vast open sea together. To experience the liberating sprint on the sandy beach Isabella adored, and to inhale the freedom mirrored in Olivia's eyes. We stood on the precipice of venturing beyond. The sparkle in Edward's eyes embraced me. The light of the boundless ocean and the freedom it promised. It was an intoxicating sight. Nodding without words, I embraced him, unable to contain my excitement, and our lips met in a spontaneous kiss. After a momentary hesitation, he pulled me into a tight embrace. Tears, laughter, sobs, and cries intertwined, creating a blissful symphony. The wind tousled our disheveled hair. An inexplicable scent of the ocean's breath filled the air. End. The true ending. The first step of a journey. Well, I loved this. That was lovely. So much more uplifting. Everyone lives, including Olivia. My goodness, that full backstory, though. Oh my goodness. And Robert is just unfathomably evil. And wow. Oh, that was so nice, though. It was so nice. I really loved this. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed the true ending. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.